Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm going to just get started here, but I first just wanted to welcome you all to our space. Have any of you been here before? Yes. Oh, some of you have. When? Oh, cool. OK, well, welcome back. This is our first event in a series of events that we're doing for Art and Photography Month. So welcome, and hopefully we'll see you back towards the end of the month as well. So I wanted to first start by introducing myself. My name is Victoria Rogers, and I'm the Art and Photography Outreach Lead, which means that I get to give talks like this one and work very closely with creators as they develop projects. So first today, I'm going to talk a bit about Kickstarter really broadly, what we've seen on site, trends, some of the larger projects we've seen, some smaller, really important projects that we've seen. And then I'm going to invite a few panelists who've done really awesome projects on stage, and we'll spend most of the night asking them questions. And I'll give the floor over to you guys as well to ask some questions too. So start thinking about those, and we'll get started. And first, I wanted to ground you guys in our space here. We are obviously in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and this is Kickstarter's only headquarters. This is where we all are, and we all work on these floors. And this is some of my colleagues. We have actually just over 100 people who work here at Kickstarter. And I think what's really important about these folks is that a lot of them are creative. And so at the heart of what we do is explore creativity on Kickstarter, on the platform. But we ourselves are artists, musicians, people who come from creative backgrounds. And we were actually founded by 3 people who identified as creatives themselves. Most of you probably know this, but Kickstarter is a place to create something with others. It's a place where people put up a crazy idea and share it with a community of people who they have support them, back their project, and become more engaged with it as well. We have 15 creative categories on site. These are all of them. I imagine most of you are here for art and photography, but we really do have a broad spectrum of creative categories. Everything from design to fashion, food, technology. If there's something that is creative at all, there's probably a home for it on our site. So you can, if you visit the site, go and take a look at these places and really explore the potential. We've had over 79,000 projects funded and over $1.5 billion pledged to these projects. So these are projects that came to life because someone was brave enough to put them on Kickstarter and share them with a broader community. I think the most exciting way to really think about these projects is in terms of the people who are supporting them, who are coming together and building this community that I mentioned. We've had 8 million backers pledge projects, and over 2.4 of those are repeat backers. So repeat backers are people who are coming back to the site again and again, sharing in projects, and really looking for the next point of innovation on Kickstarter. We're a global community. We have backers from nearly every country in the entire world, and we're rapidly expanding as well. So art and photography. How many of you guys are artists or photographers yourself? Oh my God, OK, so nearly everyone. And how many of you have project ideas? Cool. OK, so hopefully this will help set you on the path to actually bring those to life. And I'll be around afterwards as well to answer questions and talk more specifically about your projects. I think one of the most exciting things about art and photography on Kickstarter is that these are projects that people are bringing to life with a community, with people who are finding the project on site, who they're sharing it with. These are things that are really based in the collective and sort of operate outside of institutions very often. But what we've seen is that some of the biggest names, some of the biggest cultural institutions have actually taken these projects and brought them within their doors. So we've seen projects added to the MoMA's permanent collection. I was just at the New Museum on Saturday and saw a performance artist do a work there as part of the triennial. And so we really have seen that some of these big heavy hitters and names have included Kickstarter projects in their collections and showcased them in various ways. We're at just under 9,000 projects between the two categories. and over $65 million pledged. So again, it sounds really big, but I think if you break it down by the individual project, it becomes this more manageable, more understandable series of projects that have all come to life via Kickstarter. So the next part, I'm going to dive into a few project examples. We're going to look at some big projects, some smaller projects, and then we'll get to our panel. This is a project that is actually a part of the MoMA's permanent collection. It's one of several. And a man named Masad Hassani was really interested in building a low-cost, wind-powered mine detonator. It's a really beautiful aesthetic object, I think, but he actually came to Kickstarter because he wanted to move from the prototype phase and turn it into something that could actually be functional, to develop it and have it actually be used in the field. We've seen a number of photo books on Kickstarter. One of our panelists has actually created one. And this is another really great example of a photo book project by two photographers. They were working together to investigate what happens to Olympic cities after people leave. What happens to those spaces, and how do people react? What's left over? What are the remnants that are there? This is another really big project. Have any of you guys heard of this one? Yeah, so it's one of our biggest art projects. I think the second most funded project in the art category. But Marina Abramovic came to Kickstarter to galvanize support to create a space for a durational art institute. So giving people the opportunity to learn from her practice. And then this is another project that had quite a large following. Almost 27,000 people pledged to support this project to create a 3D printing pen. And actually, there are two iterations of this project that have come to Kickstarter. So those are a lot of the big guys, a lot of the really large projects that we've seen. But most projects on Kickstarter are made by people like you and people like me, people who are raising between $1,000 and $10,000. We're going to look at a few of those. This first one is a girl named Katie, who is really interested in seeing the world through the eyes of others. So she set disposable cameras across the globe, left them in parks, and invited people to take photos. And then she collected the cameras and uploaded them online so that the whole world could see. This is a project based in New Orleans. This artist named Swoon was really interested in bringing music back to the Crescent City, thinking about how she could reactivate the music scene post-Hurricane Katrina. So she partnered with New Orleans Airlift and created this village of musical architecture. This is another project, wildly different. An artist named Brianne wanted to share stories and learn about community. And she thought that manicures were strangely a place where people start to slow down, a place where you might be able to engage with a community, with a person more directly and pretty intimately for a stranger relationship. So she bought a canned ham trailer, piled in all of her stuff, and set off across the United States. The Foresight Foundation was interested in examining the relationship between incarceration and art. And so they brought Ai Weiwei's work for the first time to Alcatraz. And then this is a really great project that's actually based in Brooklyn. A woman named Susanna Taishu wanted to create a new brand for her ceramics. She wanted to buy this machinery that would allow her to make sure that each of the pieces that she made were very consistent. And she wanted to be able to work in a more industrial way. So she came to Kickstarter to buy that machine and then shared her ceramics with all of her backers. So that's a lot, I know, a lot of different projects, a lot of different perspectives. And so I'm going to ground us a bit in how it works and really give you a sense of the guidelines and the parameters that kind of hold this creative ecosystem together. So these are our rules. The first one is that projects must create something to share with others. This is what I was talking about before with the 15 categories. If you find a house for your project in one of those places, you're good to go. Then the second is that projects must be honest and clearly represented. And the third is that projects can't fundraise for charity, offer financial incentives, or involve prohibited items. So projects should be legal. And I think it's worth just clarifying the charity part, because I think sometimes there's confusion about nonprofits and how they can use Kickstarter. And we totally welcome them as long as there is a creative project that is taking place. Our funding model, this is all or nothing funding. And I bet a lot of you guys know what that is, right? Does anyone, what about, yeah, what is it? Yeah.
Oh, so it's if you don't reach your goal, then you don't get any of the funding.
Yeah, exactly. So for those in the back, it's essentially that if you don't meet your goal in a set timeline, you don't receive the funds. But if you do, then you do. And so it can be this point of fear, a point of contention. And I think these three reasons really help break that apart a little bit and contextualize what all or nothing funding really does. The first is that it's compelling. It's exciting. You can imagine if you set a timeline and you get all of your friends, your family, your extended community, your fans, your internet, everyone behind you, if you set a timeline, it's an active moment. It's a time when you can get everybody to work together to make this thing happen, and it has an end date. The second thing is that it's protective. It ensures that if you raise half of your funding, you're not then, you're not at the stage where you actually have to make this thing that you only have half of the funding to do. It's also protective for backers in the same vein. The next slides are a couple of stats that contextualize that a bit. This first one is that 40% of projects reach their project goal. And I think it's actually pretty incredible because a lot of projects have never seen the light of day before they get to Kickstarter. A lot of projects have never been shared with anybody. So for 40% of them to find community and to have people behind them is really awesome. The next thing is this tipping point idea, which is something that we've named internally. But it really speaks to the momentum that all or nothing funding can give you. And it's that 80% of the time, if you reach 20% of your funding, you'll get all the way there. So people start jumping in and helping you out, even just at that 20% mark. You see that people want to be part of a winning team. They want to be part of something that seems like it's going to succeed. And then this next section is really the last one before I bring our panelists up. And it's this idea that Kickstarter is a story. So beyond your project and what it is, I think one of the most powerful things that you can do is share the broader story of your project. Why do you care about it? Why should other people care about it? Why is it important? All of those things are essential to convincing people to be a part of it with you. And you have 4 different tools in which to do that. The first is just your planning. It's all of the pre-work you do, all of the stuff that you figure out ahead of time so that the life of your campaign is really the time that you can hit the ground running because you've figured out a lot of your outreach strategy, who you're going to talk to and how you're going to talk to them. The second thing is a project video. And that's something that probably all of you have seen. But it's really a powerful tool. It's your moment of connection with people. They can see you, and they really can, at that point, I think, connect with you and your project and your story and your team. And I think sometimes we see really great project videos that are slick and highly produced, but we also see really amazing project videos that people just shoot with their camera phone, but because they're able to tell their story in an impactful way, they really hit home. And then the third is your reward tiers, which is probably my favorite section of this, which there's just a lot of room for invention and a lot of room for creativity. And rewards are the opportunity to give people an invitation into your project. The rewards are the copy of the thing that you're making, or a special experience, a behind-the-scenes look, or original drawings. In exchange for funding, you'll be setting up a series of these that you give your backers. And then finally is project updates. And these are how you keep track of people and keep them in your community once they've pledged. You'll be able to send them through Kickstarter updates about what's gone well, what's gone wrong, where you are in the process, when their rewards are coming. And I think they're a really underutilized, actually, opportunity to keep up with people and during the life of your campaign also get them to help you garner support as well. So with that brief intro, I think it's time for you guys to all come up. Welcome. Thanks. Okay, so these are our three panelists. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of them, and then they're going to tell us about their projects. So on the end, we have Scout, who's a photojournalist. She's based here in New York. Then we have Lucien of The Invisible Dog, which is a space here in Brooklyn. He's founder and director. And then we have Marshall, who's half of a duo that we've seen on Kickstarter 3 times called Ligerano Reese. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Marshall, to give us,
well,
to give us background.
Thank you for coming out tonight. So this is a slide of the most recent Kickstarter that my partner Nora Ligerano and I did. It was called Dawn of the Anthropocene, and it's the 3rd Kickstarter project we've done. And it's a large ice sculpture of the words "the future" in front of the Flatiron Building that we sighted on the day of the People's Climate March and watched it melt away. So while it's melting away, we streamed it live over the internet. We photograph it as a kind of fine print, and also make a time-lapse video, which is going to be showing at the Moving Image Fair in Chelsea on beginning Thursday through Sunday. So Kickstarter's on all 3 projects has been an important element as not just to raise money, because there's so much going on in the development of these events that we try to keep the funding level at a manageable level, so that doesn't require too much time and effort on our part, because there's so much other things that we're doing. But what we like about Kickstarter, and what I think Kickstarter has been very useful for us, is extending our reach and for communication.
Great, thank you. And Scout, that's me. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Scout Tufangxian. I came to Kickstarter pretty late in the project that I was working on. I describe it as a 4-year project, which I did the math recently and realized that 2009 was not 4 years ago, so it's a 6-year project, documenting the global Armenian diaspora. It's a project that I had been talking about doing since I was a small child, and I started out funding it through the proceeds from my career as a photojournalist and from the proceeds from my first book, which was about the Obama campaign and had done quite well. But eventually I started running out of money, and I wanted to finish it before the centennial of the Armenian genocide, which is this April 24th, 2015. And so Kickstarter seemed like kind of a natural place to go. And like you were saying, that the thing for me with Kickstarter that was so amazing was not just the funding, which was obviously hugely important and has allowed me to publish a book, but the network that it built around it. This was the first time this particular project had seen the light. I'd been working on it on my own for so long that I was kind of starting to worry that it wasn't going to mean anything to anyone but me and possibly my father. But it turned out that I had over 500 backers. I raised I asked for $35,000. I raised $61,000 plus an additional 5 from private donors and another 23 from a foundation who liked the Kickstarter. So it was an enormous thing for me.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would not have been able to finish the project without it.
The Invisible Dog is an art center in Brooklyn, and it's a multidisciplinary art center. We present exhibition, visual arts, performances, dance, music, theater. And we have 35 resident artists in the building. They have their studio in the place, so that's the building. It's a very live place, almost 24 hours a day. Created in 2009, and we started to do Kickstarter in 3 years ago, so it's the 3rd season. Why? Because we needed money. But why we decided to use Kickstarter for that, it's because we knew that Kickstarter were going to give us exceptional and amazing tools to raise this money. It's for sure, there is the network of Kickstarter, there is many things like that, but the tools are absolutely perfect. And above that, the relationship we have with the staff of Kickstarter since the first year has been absolutely essential in the success of our 3 campaign. Why? Because they gave us the keys, I don't want to say small advice, but yes, very small advice, but at the end are extremely important. So that's why we did Kickstarter.
Awesome. And then, Scout, you spoke to this a little bit, but for you two, at what stage of your project's life did you come to Kickstarter? Sort of when did it make sense to be on Kickstarter, and why at that particular moment did you feel like, okay, now I'm ready to bring the community into this project that I've been working on?
I mean, for me, it made a big difference that I brought people in at the kind of the end of the project. I think for my backers, people would not particularly be interested in helping me start out on a project. And I see this a lot of people who are like, I have this great idea and I've never done this before, but if I just have the money, and yeah, maybe you could do it, but I think people like to kind of push you over the top as opposed to kind of lift you up from the bottom.
I think for me, so we did 3 projects, and 2 have been the ice sculptures, and 1 was a fiber optic tapestry that we made. And I think in the case of the fiber optic tapestry, it was very, very late in the process, and it was that we needed some additional money to finish it. So, and thankfully we were able to raise it. But what happened, and what I think made me think differently about Kickstarter, was we got into we were picked up by a number of journalists and blogs because of the fiber optic tapestry in ways that I just would never have thought of. That I just don't have those kind of connections.
So people were finding your project and then writing about it.
Right, through Kickstarter. I think Kickstarter chosen it as one of the projects of the week or something like that. And so then I realized, well, actually Kickstarter is an incredible tool for outreach. And I really do feel that. So that with the ice sculptures, Kickstarter is a component. That's why I say that I'm not trying to raise tens of thousands of dollars. I'm at $5,000 to $7,000 because first off, it's as Victoria said, it's all or nothing, and you don't want to try to raise let's say you have a goal of 20,000, you raise 17 at the end of it, and you lose it.
But there's the momentum.
Yes, there's momentum.
The momentum. It's rare to get that close.
Yeah, right.
And not make it, but a good point that you want to have a base.
And sometimes I think I should have tried to raise more money, but I'm maybe too cautious. But I really think of Kickstarter, and at least in the ice sculptures, as just ways to really reach out to people. And the other thing that you touched on in the earlier slide presentation was the updates. I think the updates are really important because it keeps people involved.
Yeah, and for you it must be completely different, right? Because
Yes.
you've done the seasonal work.
Yes. So first, we decided to raise money before doing a Kickstarter. We said we need money to make the program of the year, and how are we going to raise this money? In the art field, it's very easy. You make a benefit dinner, a boring benefit dinner. You make auctions. There is things. The Brooklyn Museum, the New Museum, the MoMA, any galleries, any non-profit are doing, and it's always the same thing. And because the Invisible Dog is a little bit different than other, we tried to think what shall we do to be a little bit different, but also make the life easy for the donors. Mm-hmm. And that's why we decided to make Kickstarter. But when we asked Kickstarter first, can we do that? They said no.
Really?
Yes, because at this time, Kickstarter was making a selection of the project. You had to apply.
Yeah.
And then and they told me, no, you can't do that because it's a whole season.
It's too broad.
We do only project by project. So I had a meeting with Kickstarter, and then I use my French charm to convince them. It's true.
Good work. Well, maybe you set a precedent.
Absolutely, it was the first time. And I told them, sure, it's one project, but inside this project there is tons of, actually we have like 9 exhibitions per year and 14 performances. So it was almost 30 different projects to found. And finally, at the end of the meeting, they said yes, because the season was done.
Yeah.
So that's why we made it. And it's clear that people love that. Because first, for us, a cost of a benefit dinner is, I don't know, 3,000, 4,000, any fundraiser, it's a lot of money. It's time to organize, and you spend money for that. And Kickstarter campaign cost for us less than $2,000. Video, marketing, advertising, online, because we buy ads on Facebook, on social media, things like that. So the cost is very little. And then for the people, it's very easy. They can do the donation at midnight, and it's fine, it's perfect. They don't have to go to a dinner or to buy a piece of art they don't like just to support us.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really important point that when thinking about institutional projects, very often it is the big benefits, and it's few people spending a lot of money to support your institution, and Kickstarter gives more opportunities for people to come in at varied levels of engagement. So
there was also I moved here in 2008, and it was the beginning of the recession, but also it was the election of Barack Obama. And I was extremely seduced by this crowdfunding thing, and I was always giving $2 every day, almost every day, because I found that very fun, because I was receiving emails from Michelle Obama, from Jessica Parker,
I would come home from
Anna Wintour was inviting me for a dinner.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it was fun, and I found that very fun. I said, why should I do that for the art, asking people to give me $2, $3, $4, $5, $10. Doesn't matter what they have. And the first campaign, I received a donation of $18. I was very surprised, so I sent an email to the woman who made this donation, and I said, can you explain me why you gave $18? And she said, that's my credit on Amazon. That's the money I have on my account, Amazon. I gave you everything. For a French person, trust me, it's very, very moving, yes. Because we don't know that in France. No one gives you money.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so let's dial back for a second and think about some of the structural fundamentals. I'm curious to hear how you set your funding goal. I think that's a question that people often have, is how do you parse what makes sense for Kickstarter?
So I looked at what I needed, and then what I thought I could get, and then what I thought would, I mean, at the risk of being really kind of cynical about it, like what would look okay, you know, because
that's a good point.
I actually needed more than I asked for, but I thought if I asked for more than $35,000, it would kind of look bad. And I was pretty confident that I could raise the rest. So $35,000 is what I thought I could get. I was hopeful that I could get a little bit more. It turns out that I was wildly off. I raised my goal in like 3 days or something like that. So it was clear that I had miscalculated. But yeah, I just kind of looked at a lot of similar projects. I did the same thing when I was doing the reward scale. I looked at every friend of mine who had ever done a successful Kickstarter, and then everyone who had done an unsuccessful Kickstarter. And I wrote down all of the rewards. I wrote down this scale, and then I thought about how much I usually want to give when I see a Kickstarter. Generally, I can afford to support a friend $30, sometimes more, but usually kind of $30. And $30 is not often on the reward scale. A lot of times it's 10, 20, 50. So I created a reward scale that was at $30, and that turned out to be really popular. Yeah. And so a lot of things like that. I just went through a lot of different projects and saw what worked and what didn't.
I think it's really important to, $25 is the most common pledge on Kickstarter, but that's taking into account those 79,000 projects and also some of the unsuccessful ones that aren't counted in that. And so I think it's really important to take an eye to your community and think, okay, this is where I feel comfortable most people are going to be operating in a similar space to mine, at least at the beginning. How do I adjust the norm, or what most people are doing to be specific to me?
Yeah, I mean, I did this a similar thing that Scout did. The great thing about Kickstarter is, well, there's a lot of examples that you can look at to get guidance, and also Kickstarter has an FAQ series of metrics, so you can see, they break it down. I mean, this is a website, so they're constantly analyzing, people's responses, and you can see what, the various funding levels and where people are pledging, what amounts people are pledging the most of, and that's important to take into account. And the other thing that I think that concerns the two of us, Nora and me, when we're making a campaign, is what kind of incentives are we going to offer? Because you don't want, at least we don't want that to become burdensome. You spend all this effort to do a project, and then it's great, it happens, you're ecstatic, and you have all the support of, tens of, maybe hundreds of people behind you, and then you've got to give them something back, and you haven't calculated, well, I'm going to give them a digital print, and you didn't go, oh my God, this digital print's going to cost me $50, and they only gave a pledge of $30. Well, you're $20 in the hole. Right. So and just the effort to do it. So this is all things that we really need to think about as you make a project.
With that, why don't we jump into rewards and talk about those a bit more? Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
About the preparation. You're absolutely right. It's very important to prepare the campaign. And at the Invisible Dog, actually, we spend almost a month doing math on Excel spreadsheets. Mm-hmm. Because the money you need, it's not really the money you need to raise. Because if you need $10,000 for your project, you have already some money. You have your family, your brother, your sister, your best friend, and you know that these people are going to give you money. And you shall ask them first how much they are going to give you. So, and if you do this first circle like that, and you know that you have $1,500 already, so it's just $8,500 you need to raise. So it's important to prepare, as a political campaign, each vote counts. Each one. And each donation is very, very important.
I don't know what country you come from.
France. But I learned a lot from you.
Here, every vote, counts and you pay for it.
If you live in the right state.
Yeah, right.
Right, but I do think
it's
that
the same. It's the same everywhere. Each donation counts.
Yeah.
$1 is almost important as $10, $20, or $100.
Definitely.
Each one, but that because at the end it's just a multiplication of donation.
Right.
Well, it's also important to prepare your kind of, at the risk of saying marketing strategy. I created a Facebook page for the project several months before I started. I invited everyone I knew to kind of support it. So by the time that the Kickstarter started, I had about a little bit over 2,000 fans for the Facebook page. I created 3 email lists, one of people that should get individual kind of emails, one of people who should get kind of a formal email, and one of people who would get kind of a casual email. I reached out to the media. I reached out to potential donors. All of that stuff has to happen kind of before you get started, because doing a Kickstarter campaign is a full-time job. And you're not going to have time for all of the stuff in the middle of it, because you're not going to have time to sleep.
Yeah, you want to plan in advance. I think Lucian brought up a great point, which is identifying your supporters before you start. And those can be your brother and your sister. Those can also be your fans, and those can be.
Remember, when you start, it's too late.
Yeah.
To do something, because
it's still possible. It's much better if you do it earlier.
Better if the large thing is ready, like your project, your campaign is absolutely ready, because 30 days, it's also 30 nights, so it's only really 50 full days of when people are awake. And
mine was international, so I worked 24 hours a day. It's brutal.
So with that, let's take a look at rewards and talk some strategy on that front. I put together a few from each project. Yeah, so feel free to talk about these. I called out a few that I thought were really important and great, but really the point of this is just to share with the audience how you conceived of rewards and what worked, what didn't, and perhaps what might have been surprising in the reward field as well.
You know, one thing that I think Stephanie advised me, Stephanie Pereira, who works here at Kickstarter, you know, to really think, and also the metrics. I mean, to really think of, you know, you don't want to like say offer $1,000 incentives. I mean, I think we did get a couple $1,000 incentives, but that's too much of a reach and for a lot of people. So you can see that people like the postcards because that was, you know, $25. Scout was saying a $30 threshold. And what surprised me is the snow globe, because we gave a lot of those away, and the digital print doesn't surprise me so much. That's I think a big add.
What does it cost to ship a snow globe?
That's a good question. I use FedEx ground, and like if I ship it from here to California, well, it's between $12 and $15. It's probably more than $15. Sorry?
So it's not nothing.
It's not nothing. No, that's exactly where you have to think. Well, of course, you know, you have to think about, well, you're going to make this thing, and then you got to give it to somebody, and the postage and the, you know, the boxing and all that stuff's going to add up. That's an extra expense. I mean, for me, I think that the MP3 was good. That was an easy one. You just like make the audio file, and then say you can download this. You know, it's like,
yeah, it's also a real opportunity for engagement because it wasn't at such a high price point.
No, right.
And so you were talking about it as a marketing opportunity, running the campaign, and so it's a way to get a lot of people to be supportive, just so that every little bit counts.
Well, I think, you know, also like to offer a dollar level, you know, like for $5 or $1, we'll thank you on the website and things like that. I think that's fairly common with Kickstarter, and it doesn't in our case, it doesn't generate a lot, but I mean, it does. You don't want to miss that opportunity to raise something.
Yeah. Okay, Scout. What about you?
Yeah. So my scale was pretty big. I had a lower one too. I think I had like a $10 one or something like that.
Yeah, you did. These are just a few, but you can speak to whichever ones you felt like were.
And the $30 one, I think,
impactful.
also came with a postcard, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Yeah, so my main kind of donation level turned out was $100. It was a signed copy of the book, and I did have, I think, 10 or so $1,000 donations, and I had a couple of. Yeah, I was surprised too, very pleasantly. That's the great thing about having a project with global reach is it reaches globally, and then I had a couple of $5,000 ones, which was also very surprising and gratifying.
Could you explain the handmade slippers?
Yeah, the slippers are like, it was a good idea, and the slippers are awesome, and I love the slippers.
Did you make
them? Well, they were handmade by a woman that I was in consultation with. The mistake that I made is that all of the levels got all of the stuff below it too, which means that that's a lot of slippers. And it's not so much the cost of making the slippers, which is very low, because the ladies, it's this old lady in a village in Armenia, and she's very nice, and they're not very expensive. It's just getting them from Armenia.
Here.
It's like, you know, in luggage. It was just kind of a gigantic pain. They're great slippers, though. So.
And it's so much a part of the culture of your project.
And I thought offering something quirky was a good idea. I have a friend who offered a pair of socks for his, and he had some kind of cultural reason for why he was offering a pair of socks. And I thought offering something kind of a little homey, because it was such a personal project, and most of the people, I would say probably 80% of the people who gave to my project were Armenians who cared about this project because it was their story. And so because of the personal level of that, having that kind of quirky reward really worked.
And I think that's such an important lesson, which is that if you can weave in as many threads and think really creatively about how you do that, it can be
most
beneficial.
Most of my rewards are the generic, you get the book, you get a print, you get a postcard. The slippers were the kind of one weird thing. They're great slippers, though.
I know, I'd love to see some. Okay. Okay, and then Lucien, we're going to talk about yours for a minute.
Yeah, our rewards are zero cost rewards, because the first year we did the mistake to have things to mail to people, so it cost us a lot of money. So then we decided no more cost. So we have created the wall of donors at the Invisible Dog in the main hall, where each year we commission an artist to handwrite the name of the 500 donors. And actually people love that, because they don't receive anything, really, but they have their name handwritten. So we send them the picture, we post them on Facebook, on Twitter, and we tag them, yeah. And then the only expense we have is we send a personal letter to each person. I sign it, I sign all of them, with the name of each person, with the thanks. When I know them, I add something very personal, but it's personal for everyone. So that's the cost of a stamp.
Are most of your donors local?
We have like, last year we had 450 donors, I think 350 and 100 abroad. And then we give things we have, comp tickets for performances, or VIP visit of the artist studio, preview exhibition, things like that. But we don't give any art, except if people give $5,000. So at that level of pledge, we offer art, but not before. Yeah. I don't know which one. Yeah, so the name of the artist, the VIP ticket. Yeah, and we have also apartments, so we can offer a weekend in the apartment at the Invisible Dog, so people are very happy about that. They have to pay the ticket to come to New York City, but.
And then can you speak a little bit to then having this cycle, right? 3 times you've raised money for a season at the Invisible Dog. How are these people who are on the donor wall every single time? Yes. Are they really like tried and true fans of yours? And then I'm also curious, Marshall, on your side, having done 3 projects that are maybe more different, what that process of carrying backers with you has or hasn't been like?
I think 75% of the donors are regular, they come every year. And there is people, they disappear just because they moved. They are not part of the community anymore, or maybe they don't like us anymore, I don't know. But yeah, almost 70% are returning donors every year. But we still have to do the card every year.
I mean, in our case, I mean, we have basically the same, mailing list that's going out. So these are people who've already, probably, if they're interested, they've supported us in the past. And I think that for me, I mean, I probably as Scout and Lucien would agree, or not. I mean, it's complicated. I mean, it's not complicated. It's what's the word to say here? It's humbling to send an email asking for somebody's support, and you do it once and you get so many people responding. It's great, and then you go like, oh well, like so many people didn't. So then you have to send another email out to them. But somebody who was very helpful said, really, don't worry about that. People don't mind you contacting them, so you have to keep that in mind, that you're not really, I mean, yes, it seems like you're bugging people, like, please give me some money, but these are your friends or your supporters, and they're not going to take it like that. They'll want to help at some point when they can.
I mean, as a photographer, I get hit up for my friends' Kickstarters all the time, and I'm never offended or annoyed by it. The Armenian community was a little bit more delicate, because I think most of my donors had never donated to a Kickstarter before. And so that was a little bit more complicated. But what I would do is I would send out, I said I had those 3 email groups, and I would send out that first email I asked for money, and I asked for them to spread the word. And I said, more than money, what I need is for you to send it out to your network. We're such an interconnected community. Then I sent out another one kind of towards the end of the project, thanking them for spreading the word, / also reminding them that there were 3 days left in the campaign and to send their money. I tweeted at random strangers. If someone was kind of prominent in the community, I got their email address and I randomly emailed them. The tweeting at random strangers thing worked kind of astonishingly well. I was totally shameless. I did 5 or 6 Facebook updates a day, both on my page and on my personal page. Constant pimping of this project.
So could I just ask, Scout, so you've done the project, you've done all this outreach, so was it like, just so, in the aftermath?
Am I speaking at every Armenian event that ever existed?
Well, I mean, are you still as engaged with Facebook and various social media?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be. You know, I just got an advance copy of the book last week, so I'm sending out, especially to my Kickstarter backers, I'm sending out sneak peeks. I'm speaking at a lot of events. I'll be going back to a lot of these communities on kind of a book tour. So I am engaged. I'm not as engaged just because how can you be? I need to sleep sometimes. I was running my Kickstarter campaign when I was, the other thing is so I was living in Istanbul when I started it, which means that there were kind of time zone crazinesses there. And then I was shooting the project as I was doing it, which helped with the updates. So people could see, oh, my money is gone to send her to photograph the monks in Venice, or I was in Italy, Armenia, Russia, and France, I think, during the Kickstarter campaign. And so I was able to do updates from these places so people could see what, and Hong Kong, so people could see what their money was going to do at the time. It meant that I got 0 sleep, but it was good for the campaign.
So with that, I'm going to open it up to you guys for questions. And yes.
How much time did you guys prepare before you launched the Kickstarter? Like, did you market it like 3 months before, you know?
A couple months.
What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you really have to think it through. I mean, so it's, you know, you really want to make sure that you're thinking about the incentives. I mean, you may not think so much the first time you do it, but if you do subsequent Kickstarter drives, it'll be more familiar, but you'll think more precisely about how you want to make it work.
I had a friend who did a super successful Kickstarter campaign for a documentary film, and he was nice enough to kind of write me out a newbie Kickstarter Bible that I followed pretty much exactly. And I would call him up and just ask him what he did. And so, yeah, it was a couple months.
I'm really talking about like the actual marketing, like networking aspect, like telling people that your project is happening on Kickstarter. So how long did that take before you actually launch? Well,
you have a finite time once you launch your project. So, you know, it's 30 days, or, you know, it could be, what, is it 45 or 2?
Yeah, you can have a project that runs up to 60 days, but 30 days is what we've seen to be most successful. I think her question might be, how far in advance did you start the marketing?
I told a few people I was doing it. I didn't tell everyone because people tend to get very excited about the thing in the moment and then forget about it. Everyone has a different strategy. I had a friend who had built up donors to come in at a certain time, and I didn't trust people to do that, or I didn't trust myself to be organized enough to keep up with it. I had there was a New York Times Lens blog piece about my project, and they were nice enough to time it to run the day after my Kickstarter started. They wanted to do it the day of, but for complicated reasons, that didn't work out. And so that was ready to go. I had a few people lined up, and I had all of these emails ready to go. But I have found that, at least in my community, if you tell people about something, it better be ready immediately, otherwise they're going to forget all about it. But every project is different in that case, and every group of donors is different in that case. So you should think about what your community that you're aiming at is like.
I want to ask you, I'm also a photographer, and I also want to make a photo book. Mm-hmm. I already know that Kickstarter takes a fee, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have the Amazon fee, or?
Well, that's changed, I think.
Yeah, so it's a similar fee structure, though. We are now on Stripe versus
Amazon.
So
it's like around 10%?
Yeah, it's a little less than that.
6%, right?
Yeah, it's between 2 and 3% in addition to the flag.
Okay, then there's also the taxes. Mm-hmm. How that's apply for an artist project or
Pardon?
how the taxes apply in a Kickstarter campaign for an art
considered
project.
like a windfall, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
income
earnings,
tax,
it's
yeah.
income tax.
Income tax.
So, you know, it depends on what your overall income is and how
Well,
it
if you
fits
make
in.
your campaign in January and you spend the money during the year, it's better. If you do your campaign in December, you receive the money before the end of the year, you're going to pay much
And
more
I spent
taxes.
pretty much all of my money in the year that the project
When you spend
came
the
out.
money during the year, it's fine. You don't pay taxes.
Yeah, we have a guideline on Kickstarter.com/taxes that helps, but it really is an individual situation.
But that's a real cost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And it has
because
to be
it's
kind
part
of figured into your budget.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah. Any other questions?
Good evening. I'm wondering if all three of you could talk a little bit about your strategy for creating the video. We haven't really spoken about the videos and sort of what you think, especially for the repeat customers, sort of what you think works best for the video strategy.
Well, I'm a little biased because for a long time I've worked in television and film production, so my sense of production values are maybe a little higher than a lot of other people's, but I don't know. I mean, I think that it's really important to connect with your audience, and as Victoria said at the beginning, you just film yourself with your camera, and if you're compelling, it will work. I mean, the videos I do there are a lot of cuts in them. I use graphics and.
Fancy.
Well, I don't know if it's fancy, but but that's what I'm thinking of. I mean, it could be badly shot because I'm not a camera person, but I'm an editor, so I can edit.
I had some help with mine because I had a friend, my friend who was doing this documentary film, filmed me for it. I wrote the script, and basically mine was designed to hit right at the hearts of the Armenian diaspora. So it was a sad song, and then me talking, and then happy song, we're all surviving, yay, everything's great, support this project. And then sad song, we might not make it if you don't help us out, So that was kind of, I aimed at people's emotions. It was primarily, in my case, it was primarily photographs. In fact, there was more of me than I wanted in the video. It was primarily the work, because I thought that was what would appeal to people the most. It's what I was trying to get people to buy into or invest in, and so less me, more that.
And then do you want to just add?
Yeah, we put a lot in the video. We have the chance to have a fantastic film director at the Invisible Dog. His name is Mac Primo, and he's doing a lot of commercial. He's known for that, and so every year he's doing the video for us. The quality of the video is extremely important, much more probably, I think, than what you're going to say in the video, because almost everyone's saying the same thing. But the quality of the sound, the quality of the image. Remember that when the people are watching your video, they are probably in the street, at the office, rarely at home. So they are on their laptop, the sound is not very good. If you don't hear really well the message, if the image is not perfectly clear, they stop immediately to watch the video, because you must attract them very, very, very fast. Even if they know you really well, they can give up and say, okay, I'll watch that later, and for sure they forget.
Do you guys watch the videos on the Kickstarter? All of you do? You watch all the way through? Because I usually, when I give to a Kickstarter campaign, I'm familiar with the work, and I'm like, yeah, sure. And I watch maybe a couple seconds of the
Yeah.
When they are good, you look at them.
You have a few tools, right?
Yeah.
The quality of the video, what you're saying can be a tool to incentivize people to pledge. There's sort of several. With that, I think we have to wrap up. And we have another talk happening in here in about 15 minutes, I believe. It's the next version of this, the more advanced one. So for people who have project ideas, I'd really suggest sticking around and joining us. We're going to have some time to set up for that, and I'll welcome you to join us in the kitchen area. I'll be here, and a couple of us will be around for a few minutes too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.